Hey, Paul, I lost so much weight we've been invisible to the listeners. It's
Yes.
we're sorry. Paul's been traveling a little bit and studying for the California Bar Association exam. Both that way my lawyer can tap your lawyer out in both California and Washington soon. Could be crazy. You just no sold me too. You're just like, yeah, I'm not talking about that. Okay. Moving forward.
Yeah, let's actually pass first. Let's see.
Well, I have full confidence that anybody that can tap me out here can tap you out there. So, but as Paul's gotten ready for that, he also, I don't know, did we talk about your Kaya Terra visit either? I don't think we have.
Yeah, it's been a while. So yes, I spent a week at our affiliate camp in San Jose. It's one of the motivating factors for wanting to take California bar. Hopefully, I'll be traveling there semi-annually. Uh, and there's a lot of really big businesses and a lot of people in San Jose. So it's a twofer: travel,
And
train, maybe pick up some clients.
and then I traveled to Phoenix this week to teach a class for work. And so since Paul and I have been going back and forth on traveling, that means I've had to keep up some of my workouts without Paul. And I've had to ask Paul what to do when I'm gone. And we've had to talk about diets and eating. So we thought this one's going to be a little shorter podcast, but we thought this would be a good time to talk about how do you maintain your diet and your sleep and stay on track while you are traveling, and what are some good hacks and trips and tips. And before we get into that, we'll do a quick update. So literally flew out of Paul's gym today and didn't do the weigh-in because I was not flying home. I flew home yesterday, but I was flying in the car out of the gym to get here to do the podcast with Paul. So with that said, did weigh in this morning at home though, and I weighed 188.8. And our last weigh in, I weighed 189.4 and 24.9% body fat. So still continuing to make the progress. We are down that from 211 at the start. So super excited about the progress. Were you happy to see me in decent shape when I got back from the trip?
Yeah, you're looking good. I saw your arms are looking really good today, which is a good barometer
Listen,
as far as
all thinned out. I was wearing a medium tank top too,
yeah.
because I wanted to show off the guns and everything else, because that's what happens when you lose weight. Your clothes shrink. Even my jujitsu hoodie is getting a little loose. We're gonna have to get me a smaller one. I gotta show off everything. So anyway, I'm happy with the progress. So keep following us along. We'll give you the progress updates as we go through. And thought today would be a good chance to talk about diet and nutrition while you're traveling. So the first time in November when I traveled on this journey in December, I did actually log my food. So I tried my best, taking pictures of plates, not weighing anything, of course, but trying to measure everything. How did you think I did the first couple times around?
And measuring when you were traveling.
Yeah, the November and December trip.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the first one was probably better.
And we continued to lose weight, right? So it wasn't like there wasn't big stop gaps there. Uh, this time, I feel like I've been in so dialed in with the weights and measurements. I didn't even log food while I traveled. I just ate intelligently, except for yesterday. And that's a whole different story. I had a cheat day yesterday. I'm allowed one once in a while. But I think when you're eating and you're weighing, you can get a good look on a plate and see what's going on. And so, what are the types of foods generally, Paul, that you eat when you're traveling? And I can kind of share some of mine. What do you go for at a restaurant? What do you try to look for and identify to stay on track?
Yeah, it depends on um, it depends on where I'm at and like what I am I in like maintenance or am I really trying to lose or what's going on there. Um, I think it's just best is to keep the simple rules in mind, just to have a preference with protein first. Um, load up on, like, I went to, because I've been eating, getting ready to cut weight this next week. Um, but I don't want to go into starvation mode. And so I've been doing, I'll go to Whole Foods and get something from the bar, and it's mostly protein and chicken and vegetables, um, just so I don't have, hopefully try to mitigate some hunger pains or desires to overeat. And I think that's been helpful. So um, I think when you are traveling, you can do it a couple of ways. You can focus, number one, on going to places that are going to have large servings of protein, and number two, stylistically, going to places that are going to be cooking food. When I'm traveling, I think I went to, when I was eating out, we went to a steakhouse one night, um, and I had eaten that day, and so I ate a ton of meat, probably had a ton of calories, but didn't have a crazy amount of carbs. Um, and your body, I think, is gonna have more of a difficult. Like, it's very easy to overeat on carbohydrates. So if you're eating a ton of protein, even if you're not measuring, I think that your body is just probably going to retain less weight from that than fats or carbohydrates. And
I think
so,
you can sneak in a oh, sorry. I was just gonna say I think you can sneak in a lot of carbs too, right, on accident. Like, let's say you go for to a Mexican restaurant, there are healthy eating options there, but man, they put those chips out in front of you right away.
yeah, and that's the one where I think, going back to the point that you're making, is the degree of success that you're going to have is just going to be enhanced based on the measurement. Like, you can kind of get a good feel about certain things when you're eating, but especially if you're in like a social environment or whatever, that's, I mean, in my mind, I think chips and salsa are like toxic in that sense. Like, you could just eat 1,000 calories of chips and salsa and not one. And so, I mean, I think that you have to continually update and reevaluate as you're going on, right? Knowing that the more that you're measuring, the more precise and more certain I think your results and outcomes are going to be. You want to be able to build some intuition, and so I think measuring also helps you rebuild that intuition. I think we talked about that. It's like, you know,
Yeah. Well,
100
let's
100 calories of chips is like 6 chips. It's not very.
yeah. Well, let's analyze one of the meals I had while I was out. So I think Paul is absolutely right. Like when you're looking, I kind of call it the meat and vegetable rule, right? So I'm looking at a menu and I'm looking for dishes that are meat and vegetables. And I'm trying not to have chicken teriyaki every meal, right? Because that can get very boring on a trip and very tiresome for the people that you're traveling with too. Like if a group wants to eat out or something like that, it's tiresome for you just to say every time, well, my options are like chicken teriyaki or chicken teriyaki, right? Or a sandwich bowl, right? Like, hey, my options are a sandwich bowl. We can go to a sandwich place and I'm going to throw it in a bowl without the bread, right? And yeah, it's good for lunch. But people, dinner's a social time, like Paul was talking about. So generally, I'm looking for those things. Let's analyze one of my meals, and I think I did pretty well because I did eat the chips, but I counted them. Everybody's gonna think I'm crazy. But as I was just eating with folks. I counted them. So this was the meal. So we got chips and salsa, of course, to start out, and I had 7 chips. And these were, the nice crispy chips. That was pretty easy. I just had to be, to what Paul was saying, very conscious about what I was doing, right? Because if you get in that conversation, man, you can just chow down on the chips and salsa. I had one skinny margarita. So for those that don't know what a skinny margarita is, that is a margarita that doesn't have margarita mix in it, right? Well, they'll flavor it with alcohol. So had one of those. And so that was about a couple shots of liquor. It wasn't a huge one, right? So a couple shots of liquor in there and some lime juice. And I had shrimp fajitas. And I had one of the two tortillas. I think they gave us 2 or 3 tortillas, but I had one of the two tortillas with my shrimp fajitas. So shrimp and vegetables, right? On the thing. And then they give you like the beans and everything on the side. But, I just had a couple bites of them. I didn't go crazy eating that side stuff. So how would you rate that type of meal as far as a dinner? I know it's not perfect because there was alcohol and things like that, but what kind of advice would you give me back if I came back and I said, "Hey, a couple nights of my trip, that was the type of thing that I ate."
Yeah. I mean, I think I put it into two categories. I would say in a total scale of like things you should be eating to not be eating to really accomplish your goals, it's probably a 6 out of 10, right? Like it's closer to hindering your goals than it is to help you in your goals. In a category of um, of self-control in that type of environment, it's probably like an 8 out of 10. Like you're doing a good job in that. Your best bet for success would to not be in that situation. But from a society, that is one of the problems of the culture of eating in America is, oh, I mean, overeating and overindulging on work trips and your stress. It is a part of American culture. Like we do that a lot here, and it's easy to do. Like it's not intentional. It's just like, it would have been socially acceptable for you to eat, 10 times the amount of chips and, and get a dessert and have two more drinks, right? That probably would have been completely socially acceptable. And in certain circumstances, maybe even socially preferable is like, oh yeah, that's normal, right? Um, but I think that goes back to previous conversations we had where like we're all kind of out of whack when it comes to being able to judge the amount of like excess nutrients that we're taking in. You just don't need it, right? And that's a lot of work to get back to earn that. So I would say that yeah, it's not it's totally reasonable, and it's this kind of thinking like in the algorithms of like it's the least objectionable alternative, right? It's like, wow, I could just stay at home, or stay at the hotel and not go out and not be social and not do those things. Well, that's probably not good.
Yeah.
A whole host of other reasons other than just weight loss. It's not the only goal that you have in life, though. It's a major one in public. But yeah, I mean that's still showing good, reserve in yourself and self control. And so yeah, I mean I can't hate it totally. The biggest issue for me is of course is the alcohol. I think it's going to even in small doses, it's just antithetical to weight loss, 90% of the time.
Yep. But I'm still gonna have alcohol every once in a while, so
Yeah.
it's
And
gonna happen.
there is also, what you kind of alluding to earlier is, yeah, there are of course there is of course a psychological component to this, is that we've talked about before, is you don't want to be so restrictive that you have a boomerang effect. The biggest thing people run into, right, is like you can crash diet uh, and really really cut things down, and then you just end up gaining back all the weight or overeating and gaining back that cycle. And so yeah, it's okay to um, pull back on the reins. I just think that we as a society are too easy to overcorrect the other way, right? I've been trying to do that the last couple of weeks where I'm just like, really, maybe I should be eating less, but I'm like, I don't want to put myself in starvation mode, like super long term, because it's going to make the next week really suck. And so I've been eating probably more than usual, but it's like 80% protein. I'm eating I'm
Yeah.
paying the premium to eat a bunch of eggs and meat and fats, right, to try to fuel my body in a way that's going to make it efficient, so I can have a lot of output over the next week when I'm having to train more and get kind of more RPMs out of my body as far as performance wise. Because that's the
Well,
other
let's
thing that you have to consider is like you're not training for performance, so that's less concerning to you. And for me, I'm trying to get all the macronutrients I need to perform the best that I can, hopefully at a high level. And so those are
yeah.
two slightly different goals.
One, if I was training for performance, we'd adjust the diet on the trip a little bit differently too. And we have before. Let's talk about one of the benefits I have on my trip. So I'm going to have you rate a couple more meals. I am lucky, so I'm running the event that I am hosting. So I get to pick what's there for lunch, which is nice. So there's no social pressure on the picking where you go to eat there. So I'm very lucky. One of our lunch meals, I order from this great chain, West Coast chain called Halal Guys. I'll shout them out right here. And they bring me a big tray of shawarma, a big tray of chicken shawarma, a couple trays of falafel, and they give us all the vegetables that go with it. So I can line myself right up there. And so we get a little rice too. They give you pita too, but I just don't grab the pita. Put a scoop of rice on there, put a scoop of chicken, grab a couple falafel, put a scoop of beef on there, and then go to the vegetables and stick the vegetables on top. And then they have their famous tahini. They call it white sauce, but I'll put a tiny bit of tahini, just take the little packet and sprinkle the meat with it. What do you think of that one?
Yeah, I think that goes back to like the category of things where, especially if you can get large, servings like that for a group, that's really great because you can focus on loading up your plate with the protein, the vegetables. I think we had that conversation. I think you actually said it to me, what was it, like 2, 3 weeks ago. You're like, man, it's just so easy to overeat on rice. And so I
Yep.
think that's another thing where just understanding, because I really like rice and I'm the same way. Like I could be like, oh, it's rice, that's not bad. And the way that rice is cooked and how much starch is in it and all that can, if you put coconut oil in it and all that can affect the amount of starch and stuff you're putting in your body. But at the end of the day, I don't think it's, for me personally, the difference between eating one scoop of rice and three scoops of rice doesn't really feel much different. I feel like, to me, I feel like I ate the same thing, and you definitely didn't, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So I think that's where, again, you just being cognizant of it, even in that context, it's good. Um, if your goal is to just lose weight, right? If you're a bodybuilder in a bulking phase, you might be eating chicken and rice 6 times a day, right? Because that's the
Yeah.
macronutrients that you need to try to get yourself the results that you want. Not that we're not worried about preserving muscle, but we're trying to reach a specific body fat percentage and a specific weight because of the impacts that that's going to have on your body overall.
When I also tell you a secret, there's two other reasons I like ordering there from there when I'm teaching a class. And everybody can get on in the secret. Besides it meeting my dietary restrictions, one, I'm reaching out to my participants, and there's usually somebody that's asking for halal. And so that makes it really easy. So I get all the meat that way. And then on top of that, I'll usually have somebody who is vegetarian or vegan. So I can get them falafel and they can have vegetables and things like that too. So it serves a lot of things. By kind of looking at those dietary restrictions, I can buy a lunch that is actually really healthy. The second benefit for me teaching a class, I get a very healthy thing. Now, certainly people can overeat because it's sort of buffet style, right? So they can make the choice to overeat. But I'm also getting a lot of good macronutrients for my class participants, and I know they're going to have a healthy lunch. They're not going to die on me 2 or 3 hours later into the class because so you kind of look at that too. It's kind of fun because I can look at what's healthy for me, buy something that's tasty and healthy for my audience, and then everybody is benefiting it from it. It's kind of fun to get everybody on the journey together. And then the
Yeah.
first day, I ordered from this great place down in Phoenix called Ike's Sandwiches. They also have halal meat on their sandwiches. So here's what I ordered for the group. I ordered what they call their dirty chicken Caesar salad. It's a dirty Caesar salad because they have chicken in it, right? Big garden salad, and then two trays of sandwiches, one set of vegan sandwiches and one set of halal chicken sandwiches. What do you think of that one?
Um, Conceptually, it's not bad. What I will say is, and I haven't eaten there. I know nothing about the macronutrients or content of their bread. I think this is one thing that is uniquely known, especially if you travel abroad,
Yep.
about American bread. American bread, the wheat tends to be more processed, depending on how they're sourcing it. And there is just always more added sugar in American breads than I think you will get internationally. Um, Tons and tons of people have told me over the years, they complain about how sweet American breads can be. So if your bread is sweet, then it's probably because it has sugar in it. You know me. If I have to eat bread for long
Careful.
periods of time, I gave up bread. If I do have to eat bread, I like it to be minimally processed, some sort of like sourdough or something. I think is again going back to that like least objectionable alternative. Um,
And I
you
think their bread is a little sweet, but it's homemade and that heartier bread too. So it's got the crunch to it.
Yeah, it's unlike certain food chains that put the stuff that they put in milk in it. So
Now you mean Subway, whose bread isn't even considered bread in the EU?
yeah,
Yeah.
um, so I think that you want to look past the optics of like, oh, sandwich good, sandwich bad. I eat a lot of sandwiches, um, but just have an appreciation that like uh, just because it's something simple like a sandwich doesn't mean that it can't give you a rise in blood sugar and that it's not going to be um, detrimental. At the same time, if they're small cut sandwiches, it goes back to what we talked about before, right? It's appreciating how many calories are in it, how much sugar is in it, and if you're monitoring, if you're limiting calories and sugar in your diet, you're probably doing pretty good. So
And then with the exception of yesterday, which I will say was a complete cheat day. So I got a big Philly cheesesteak sandwich and ate half of it for lunch and half of it for dinner. So thankfully, Paul, I did not go eat a giant Philly cheesesteak in one sitting. So, but I was doing pretty good. And then I got on a flight that was already an hour and a half delayed. And then I sat on the flight on the tarmac for an hour and a half. And then I had a little bit of personal stress. So I told Paul when I got home, I may have had, if you're from the Northwest, you've heard of Dick's Drive-In. I may have had a couple of cheeseburgers, a milkshake, and some fries. So we broke the diet yesterday, but still weighed in this morning. Still weighed in a pound under where I was last week. So even though and I will say that too. Uh, I've been very disciplined on this journey, and like Paul said, every once in a while it's okay. And your advice to me, and I want to make sure that advice is still sound. We're just, it's not now. You can't cheat, right? Like if you have a bunch of calories in a day, you ate those calories. But your advice is, well, if your range is Dan is 18 to 2200, then if you did that one day that week, you probably should be staying in the 1800 range the rest of the week, right?
yeah, that was a good concept that I heard recently that I think might make it less onerous than if you try to like add it up for the week. Like I have a weekly allocation of calories at whatever it is, 7 times 2000, right? Like so I can get that many calories during the week, right? So it's like I get whatever it is, 20 to 22,000 calories, and whatever you're limiting at, right? And then, if you're in the aggregate at the end of the week, you're hitting that week after week, you're still going to be making progress. I think that's the other thing that's good to note too, is during the whole journey, um, day to day and even week to week, things are going to be variable. How much salt you've had, how much water you're having, right? But I think it is still indicative that everything is trending downward. And even following a cheat day where you have, the STAD, right? Standard American diet, um, and you overeat traditionally on a single day's worth of calories, and your body's probably holding more salt and more water than it normally would, but you're still a pound under, right? And so that's still showing that we're trending downwards, which is good because you want to take like averages of that. So it's not just
Yep.
like, hey, I went and sweat a bunch today and I'm down. It's like, no, in a normal, realistic, day to day setting, you're still trending downwards, which is a good sign of progress. Uh, you might, if you diet super well and everything goes perfect throughout the week, you might be down, 3 more pounds. That's the other thing that I would tell people too, which is you have to think in averages and in long term. You want to see that trend going down, because if you're a really big person, like you shouldn't feel any kind of way one way or the other, whether or not you're going up or down 10 pounds. It's like I'll fluctuate 6 to 8 pounds in a really, really
Yeah.
rigorous day because I sweat like crazy, right? Even if I'm, guzzling water, I lose a ton of liquids very quickly. So if you're working out really hard one day and then you don't work out the next day and you're drinking a ton of you have a bunch of, you don't even eat that much. You just have a bunch of salt and a bunch of water, your body might retain it more. And so you really want to look to the trends and the averages. And so I would say that's the good news for you is that everything is still. What are the feedbacks that we're getting? The scale is trending downwards on an average basis, not on any specific day basis.
Yep.
Um, the physical appearance is showing, and your clothes are much looser than they used to be, right? So we
Yep.
have very simple, um, physical and visual feedbacks that we're getting that show that you're trending downward. Um, and by and large, you're still very healthy, and probably a lot healthier than you have been, just because you're putting less stress on mainly your knees, which is good.
Yep. And I feel good. Like feel, for fitness wise, feel great. And so last thing I will say on trips, I also, utilize things that are in your area. So I also, when I stay, I'm trying to pick areas that are close to either restaurants or grocery stores. Generally, I'm not going to have a car on these trips, right? So I don't want to, for example, when I go down to Phoenix, it's my hotel is in, or my work is in the industrial area. So there it's close to an airport. So there are the airport hotels, but I don't find the airport hotels to be a particularly successful dietary place to stay at because there's nothing by them. And so you're either ordering food in or you're driving somewhere to get food and then you're stuck with a group every time. So for me, I stay in Tempe, which is like 1 mile away. Now, some people might be like, "Oh, well, shoot, I'd want to stay closer to work." Yeah, it's like an extra 5 minutes, so it's not that big a deal. And you have to be kind of savvy about this and look around. My hotel is also walkable distance to Paul already said them, Whole Foods. I feel like we're advertising for Whole Foods today. So when I got there the first day, before I was buying big lunches for my group and I was setting up, I went to Whole Foods. And one, I got some fruit for my class because I ordered them. I didn't eat these, by the way, but I ordered them bagels day one and donuts day two. So I got to watch breakfast in the back, but I went and got some fruit, and a little bit of yogurt for me to eat for breakfast. But for fruit was for the class, and then yogurt was for me. I also grabbed some soup for lunch. One of the high protein soups. It was that chicken, what is that, chicken leek soup or whatever. One of the high protein soups to have for lunch because I knew there's going to be times when I'm eating not the best food. And then dinner was great on that Monday because I saw my friend Lane and we went and had Indian food. And so we picked got to pick two dishes and share them. And then I have complete control over what I'm doing there. So that was a great experience. And then last thing I would say, I'm going to go grab one of these because these ones worked out for me just fine. Uh, but you don't have to do these, but put something in your backpack that you can eat if everybody else is eating something you don't want. Otherwise, you're going to just go for those calories that are there. And I don't know if we can see the macros on screen, but probably not. It's probably too shiny. But this is a 190 calorie bar with too many carbohydrates for what Paul wants right now. But for me, it's just fine. It's 22 grams of carbohydrates and 20 grams of protein. So I could toss that down in the morning if I needed to when there's a whole pile of donuts. It's going to be better for me, the donuts. It's not a perfect macro thing, right, Paul?
No, I mean it's still protein bars are still highly processed, but you
Yep.
are getting the protein. So,
Yep.
I mean, even donuts wouldn't be so bad if they had any protein content.
Protein in them. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So,
so this is going to be we're not saying this is the perfect option, but when you're looking at the options available and you don't have access to fresh food, and somebody comes in with a giant pizza or somebody comes in with a pile of donuts, and if you're not at a point where your day where you can have a piece of pizza and still keep with the macros you want, grab something else and then prepare for the next meal. And I think that's one of the other successful things about traveling. And it's so easy to put one of these in the backpack too. So they're not perfect, but we're talking about travel food, right? We're not talking about our chef's food at home where we can plan exactly what we're going to eat and map it all out. I mean, the next option is to literally do the bodybuilder thing and bring your refrigerator full of food with you. We did discuss one other option potentially if you were staying in a place for extended period of time and you were really trying to watch your macros is trying to utilize a meal service for like that week or two. So just one more option that Paul and I have talked about. We haven't tried it yet, but that could be something one of us try down the road on one of our trips too.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that another aspect of that is, dealing with the financial. So first, with inflation and the way that everything has been, most options are pretty expensive now. Even if you're going to like a fast food restaurant, it's just a lot. I mean, that used to be like the way the incentives were built. It's like, man, it's just so much cheaper and I can get so many, more calories. And I think we've reached a point where like inflation and how things are right now, but that's just not the case anymore. And so, when I'm buying a meal from Whole Foods or I'm going to Trader Joe's and I'm like, I'm getting everything I need and doing all the things I need. I might be spending 12, 14, 16, all the way up to $20 for a single meal, which does seem quite expensive. But if you go to, I don't know, you go to a McDonald's or something and you get, you a big order, it's going to be that expensive or more expensive now compared to. So and the other thing that we've talked about before is just, you just, um, not saying to make catastrophic. You have to live on the budget that you can live on and make the right decisions for you. But at the end of the day, your food that you're eating is an investment in your long-term health and well-being. So you are paying a slight more premium potentially if you're going. Not that we're shilling for Whole Foods per se, but their hot bars generally have really good options that you can get. Is it more expensive than certain other options? Yeah, definitely. But you're getting really high quality nutrients and food that's going to be satiating. So you might eat less later, so you might make it back that way. Or even if it's not, even if it costs you marginally more to eat these meals than, say,
Yep.
going out and eating at the Mexican restaurant or whatever, it's an investment in long term health. Like on the back end, that's what makes this so difficult, especially if you're in your 20s, 30s, or even healthy at 50, right? Is like you're not going to see those dividends pay until you're 70, 80, 90. But presuming you make it there, you're going to look back and be like, hey, I'm glad I did all those workouts. I'm glad I started taking those steps now, because now I keep going back to Dick Van Dyke, right? He's like, now I work out, just out of spite. And he's 99 years old and still works out 3, 4 times a week. And he's dancing in ambulatory, right? Like that's where you want to
Yep.
be. You want to make it to that last 99th year and still be dancing in ambulatory. Um, and I don't think you'll ever, if you make it there, which with modern science and everything, it is much more likely now than it was 100, 200 years ago that you can live to be 99. So at 99, are you going to be happy that you spent on average 5 to 10 more dollars per meal of food, so you have that well-being at the end? And I think that's just how you have to contextualize it.
Yep. And last I would say, but not least, if you're traveling for your company, and they're paying for it, and you
Yeah.
go to the Whole Foods bar and you spend $16 or $17, that's still going to be way cheaper for your company than eating a meal out at a restaurant anyway.
Well,
So
and that is your company. So
yeah, and so
just
yeah,
pretend that it's your
well,
money.
I don't know what you're talking about. We don't discuss that on the podcast, but the when you're making that choice. So yeah, and because you go out, you eat at a restaurant, a sit down restaurant, you're easily spending $25 or more a head, easy. I mean, just easy. So you can, when you're at home, yeah, Whole Foods might seem like a more expensive option, right? But when you're doing that, and then obviously too, if we're at home, Paul and I are perimeter grocery store shoppers, right? You go to the fruits and vegetables, you go to the meat, you go to the dairy, and you go home. And if you're going to the middle of the store, you're going for a very specific purpose and then bouncing, right? Like if I make an instant pot stew, for example, I'm going to the middle store to get my little stew packets and then I'm bouncing back to the edge of the store immediately, right? Like I'm not hanging out in the middle because that's where you get into trouble. So I can plan that. But when I'm traveling, I don't have a stove, I don't have an oven. It's a little bit more difficult. But last thing I would say, you could go that route too. So if you are traveling for leisure travel or even business travel and you don't have a really structured schedule like I have when I'm on this trip, look at some of those extended stay places or the places that actually have the stove and the oven in the inside of the room. And then, if you're going that route and you're staying for an extended period of time and you're concerned, go out with folks a couple of times. Like, there's no reason you shouldn't do that. But you can also, with the refrigerator and pieces like that, really control your macros. So if you're where Paul is at and you really need to control your macros, or let's say I get a little bit out of whack and then we're looking back, or maybe I'm at the very end where we're trying to get to that last couple percents of body fat off and we're really looking at those macros. That would be an option that I would consider. And those places, they might be a couple bucks more, but same thing Paul is saying, right? You're going to spend less on food. So if you're spending, it's all about what you choose to do. If you spend 20 bucks more on a hotel room each night, but you're spending $40 a day less on food and you're eating healthier, that's going to benefit you. So just one more quick travel tip that I've employed in the past when I've been trying to stay really focused on the specific macros is get a place where you can cook your food. You don't have to cook every meal in there, but I mean, just think of it this way. If you're cooking eggs for breakfast and you're walking away with that instead of eating a donut somewhere or a bagel, you're going to be a lot better off, right? So even if you're just doing it for one meal a day and you're staying there like 6 or 7 days, and that's going to save you a lot of money. Ever try to eat eggs out? It's getting expensive these days. So
Yeah.
plus eggs are like, I think we could barter with them. I think I
Yeah.
saw a black market for eggs the other day. There were some
One of
folks
the
standing
one of
outside.
the eggs in one of the dozen that I bought was already broken, and I've never been so heartbroken. No, no,
Yeah.
like 98 cents right there. What happened?
That's like your car payment right there. Well, uh, anyway, so we'll go ahead and wrap this one up, but hopefully you got some good information out of some of the travel and eating tips. You got to hear Paul critique my meals. And like I said, we're not asking anybody to go out there and be perfect, right? What have we been telling you on this podcast? You can eat anything, but not everything if you're on a journey like mine. Paul, right now, don't tempt him because he's got to lose some weight for a competition. So uh we're staying healthy. I'm not gonna. I promise not to bring Momo here.
Yeah,
And if you don't know what Momo is, Nepali dumplings. One of the last times Paul was doing a competition, or he was just starting the weight cut, and he forgot to tell me. And I ordered Momo, and it was sitting here at the house, and I thought he was gonna kill me. I literally thought this man right here was gonna choke me out right there next to the dumplings. But yeah, so but I won't do that to you this time. So I
appreciate
promise. Yeah. And well, when we talk next time, we might have one more of these before Paul's competition. So Paul will get to give you an update on his weight cut leading up to the competition. And then I'll give you an update on my weight cut. And then 2 episodes from now, or 1 episode from now, depending on when we get around to do it, Paul will get to hear about your results. So we'll see what happened.
Yeah, hopefully everything goes well.
All right. Well, let's sign out of here. And we hope you're doing well on whatever your fitness journey is. And thank you for joining us for mine and a little bit of Paul's this time too, as he cuts weight. So thank you so much for joining us. Hopefully you got benefit of the travel tips, and we'll see you next time.